Good morning, everyone. I'm Laura Handke, Lake Oswego's transformational voice teacher, and welcome to my vlog. For my interview today, I am so pleased to welcome Christopher Storey, who wrote this amazing book called Social Weapons, which I am literally on my third time reading it right now. It's that important. And so I just want to tell you a little bit about Chris before I welcome him, and then we'll start diving in and asking him some questions about this amazing book. So Christopher Storey, MSW. After serving in the United States Air Force, Chris completed the master's program in social work at the University of Washington. He has worked for hospitals as an organizational development specialist, director of social work, and cognitive behavioral therapist. He also maintained private clinics and hosted a radio program. Chris has been teaching and refining the peaceful self-defense system for over 4 decades. His work draws on insights from teaching his system to employees of major corporations, government organizations, civic groups, and students at numerous colleges and universities. Chris teaches with humor, wit, and enthusiasm. His passion is ultra-distance running with a personal record of 103 miles in 24 hours. With that, welcome, Chris. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi, Laura. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. So let's just dive right in and talk about what peaceful self-defense is and what exactly is meant by social weapons, because I thought that was a pretty amazing term. So let's just start out right there. What does social weapons mean exactly, and why do we need peaceful self-defense?
Okay, I'm going to start with weapon, then we'll go to social weapon, and then to peaceful self-defense.
Awesome.
Because there's 3 different parts.
Okay.
And there's no better definition I can give of weapons than just reading a sentence from Dr. Bacher's book.
And Dr. Bacher was your mentor?
Dr. Bacher was my mentor when I was getting my master's degree. He was the chairman of the Department of Psychiatry at the University of Washington, and he was also director of the Adult Development Program, and that's where all of my learning happened. And that would almost be a separate interview for us.
Gotcha.
Just because the Adult Development Program was delivering psychiatric services in an educational model rather than a medical model.
Yeah.
So we could spend a few days talking about the impact of that.
Right.
But Dr. Bacher talked about weapons. This is what he meant. He said that and it's so funny, Laura had me find this and now I'm looking for it again. Okay, Dr. Bacher says that furthermore, we believe it to be a good strategy to use the term weapon because a major purpose of the present discussion is to dispel the notion, which creates no end to confusion in human affairs, that a battle occurs only when there is violence. And he means physical.
Physical.
Now, when people say to me, well, could you come up with a different word other than weapons? I always use one of my therapy strategies, which is the pessimist-optimist strategy. And if you want to destroy a pessimist, just become more pessimistic than the pessimist. You know, you say, well, I'm a rotten person. You're absolutely right. In fact, you're worse than you even think. And pretty soon you'll be saying, well, really, I'm not that bad. So when people say they don't like the word weapon, I say, I can't think of if I could think of a more horrible, manipulative word, something worse than weapon, I would use it. And no, I don't mean, can you soften the term weapon? And I say, no.
No.
So I was getting ready to teach at the Institute of Family Development, which, you know, they consider themselves a pretty hardcore group of social workers. And they said, oh, well, you know, we don't want, you know, to use the word weapon. Could you use strategy or technique? And I said, no, No, I mean, these things are manipulative, they're nasty, they're weapons, and then it dawned on me, I said, what if we call them social weapons?
Yeah.
And everyone went, oh, I'm okay with that. And then one of the people who was helping me edit the book, he said, I had a different title, and he said, you should really call the book Social Weapons. That's what it's all about.
Because isn't it true? Most of us have been hurt by another person's words, probably even more so than we have by other
Oh,
means of being hurt by another person, right?
Oh, I think the quote in Social Weapons from Richard Conniff's book is right on. Where Richard Conniff was a Smithsonian writer, and he wrote Deep Survival, and he talks about verbal abuse can be worse than a beating. Like
Yes.
most people would rather than being verbally abused would just rather be punched. And then what I mean by peaceful self-defense
Self-defense.
is that when your fighting skills are as good as mine, we have no option but to bargain. Because and this is something we'll go over in class. I'm trying to answer this simply, but peaceful self-defense is when you use weapons, you very easily cross other people's physical, psychological, emotional borders. And if you want to have a peaceful life, you have to really know how to defend your borders. So the peaceful self-defense system is learning how to communicate with another person without crossing their boundaries.
Right.
Because even if I haven't crossed your boundary, if you perceive me crossing your boundary, you're going to fight.
Right. So maybe this is a good time, I think, just to bring up some examples of what we mean by some of these, because we're starting to talk about the territorial model here, which is,
Right.
I think, and we were going to talk a little bit about David Hawkins' work in books like Power versus Force and Letting Go. And I think that's going to come kind of naturally as we start going into some of these examples, like what are some of these social weapons and why would you feel that someone is trying to encroach on your territory or your boundary, or on the other hand, that we ourselves, I mean, I found I use a lot of these. I didn't know I was using them until I read the book and I went, oh, I can withdraw. I absolutely, it can be conflict avoidant. I can pretend to be all peaceful when all I'm really doing is running away and trying to avoid the conflict. So it's like, okay, what are some of these? Ridicule. We've got For Your Own Good. Oh, I just saw one in a movie. That was brilliant yesterday. I'm saying this for your own good, for the good of both of us. It was a character in this movie, and I'm going, oh, sure,
Mm-hmm.
sure, that's for his own good. Uh-huh, right. Seduction, sex, over a barrel, guilt, pacifism. That's the one I was talking about. Withdrawal. That's another one I'm really good at. So let's talk a little bit more about that. So, what if someone is trying to quote unquote guilt you? How does that incorporate to what you're saying about boundaries and about defending your territory and about how to do so without encroaching on another person's and therefore being peaceful? Because that's really what this is about, right?
Right.
Okay.
Well, the kind of question you just asked me is the kind of question you really shouldn't be asking a person, because you can probably see just how bad I feel, just being talked to about guilt.
Keep going.
Well, I'm doing it to you. I'm looking for my other pair of glasses.
Oh,
You get into what people should be doing, what they ought not to be doing. Like, gee, if I was you, I wouldn't be even asking that kind of question.
gotcha.
This stuff can be really, really subtle.
Yes.
It's not, and all of it is used to take over territory.
Yes.
Attention, and people think of territory as just stuff, but a
Hmm.
territory is your attention, how you feel, it's everything.
Yeah. And that's where, again, I think lies in the brilliance of this model, is that you're not just talking about physical stuff, my stuff, this mouse. I don't want you to take this mouse from me. You're talking about, I don't want my self-respect to be taken from me, or go on, add, maybe say more about maybe some just general ways that you teach this to people in some of your classes, some just general areas where people need this work in their lives.
We'll just take the one of the stories I hope to remember to tell in the class this coming week is just last week I saw George Pina on TV, and I was wondering, gee, I wonder if anybody knows who George Pina is. And George Pina was a young FBI agent who was assigned to work with Saddam. In 1990, Saddam Hussein attacked Kuwait. No one could figure out why he did it. Like, and I can remember I was helping a friend move from San Diego to Seattle, and every day at 7 minutes of the hour, they would have a report on the war. 7 minutes to Saddam. So they put George Pena, this young FBI agent who they thought could establish a relationship with Saddam, and they had him interview him. And the whole reason for that war came down to one piece of ridicule, where the foreign minister of Kuwait said to Saddam, if you don't repay this debt, we're going to turn every woman in Iraq into a $10 whore. And Saddam attacked Kuwait.
And see, I probably wouldn't have known that had I not read your book, but what you're saying is an entire war
Yeah,
started because of a personal insult.
yeah. So a personal insult can just be something like at the gym saying you're a jerk and you don't like the person, or it start an international war.
Yeah.
I mean, the social weapons, these things are nasty
Yeah.
and manipulative
Yes. Yes. And hurtful.
and
And
hurtful.
what another example that you gave in your book, and this is almost the opposite extreme, as a personal insult leading to a leader of a country invading another country because of that social insult, which is horrifying. Um, and on this other end of the spectrum was the guy who went into the restaurant and saw the roast beef piled high sandwich. And this is what he was being promised with this huge piled roast beef
Right.
sandwich. And all he got was this little sandwich. So he was being told an untruth and was being manipulated into paying for something that wasn't what he was advertised that he was paying for.
Right. And that's the social weapon seduction.
And that's seduction, right?
Yeah. And then the waitress, when complaining about, well, look at the way it looks on the thing, and then look at the sandwich, she just said, well, that's the way he always does them. So
Right.
that's the weapon definition. So
Yes.
rather than taking responsibility, she just, and this is the way people communicate.
Yes. That's what becomes so clear in going through this book. And again, we could go into 3 different interviews about how this process works, but it is so common in our culture to use this kind of language and these social weapons against each other. We don't recognize we're doing it until something like this comes along and points out, oh, I guess that's what I was just doing,
Yeah.
because we don't know, we aren't taught, which is one of the reasons why what the work that you're doing is so important, because this stuff isn't taught in schools. We don't know that we're doing it, we don't know that it's being done to us. So unless people like you come along and say, okay, so this is the social weapon, whether it be manipulation, guilt, seduction, whatever that is being used against you, and this is how you stand your ground without turning around and encroaching on somebody else's boundary or territory.
And every one of these social weapons can be defended against without attacking the other person. And this is one of the things that I've tried to present in the book and I really pound away at in the class is if you can simply defend your boundary in a way where the other person doesn't perceive you is moving into their area.
Yes.
You and it can be, it's just a skill. It's not magic, it's just skill.
Right. And a skill can be learned. Any skill can be learned by
Right,
reiteration, by doing it over and over again, which I think this is actually a good place to bring in David Hawkins' work because you introduced me to him and I have just been blown away by what I've been reading in Power versus Force and Letting Go. So let's talk a little bit about both Power versus Force, David Hawkins' work, and how that equates to the peaceful self-defense system. Because I do want to give people just an idea of how to defend themselves too, and that is the creative broken record. Is that,
right.
that's what I want to talk about here. But first, let's talk just a little bit about the difference, because this was in the last chapter of my book, the difference between power versus force, because what is going on a lot in the world is force. And force is not the same as being aligned with your authentic power, which to me is the divinity in each
Mhm.
of us. It's that higher part of ourselves. It's the part of us that is aware of the fact that what's good for the rest of the world is also good for me. It's, if I try and do what's only good for me, disregarding the rest of the entire
Right.
world, then things aren't going to go all that well for me. And that is exactly what Hawkins talks about in Power versus Force. How do you align yourself with the highest part of yourself, which is about what's good for the whole, as opposed to, I want this, and now I'm going to
Right.
try and force my will onto you, and how that equates with peaceful self defense. So please talk to me a little bit about that. I know it's a really big topic, but do the best you can.
Yep. Well, in my book, where the Hawkins material comes in is under the skill handling negative emotions. And so that's where I've drawn on him heavily. And there's really no such thing as a positive emotion. Like emotion comes from, I believe, the Greek word meaning disturbance.
Mm,
So, emotion is there's in your psychic, there's a disturbance. And so, one of the things that I try to teach in the class is how to use the Hawkins system for clearing your emotional baggage. And the better you're able to clear your emotional baggage, the more you're able to stay centered when it comes to defending your territory.
yes, which he refers to as surrender. And I have been actively doing that for the last couple of weeks since I really got into his book, which is really just sitting with an emotion, right? And
Right,
allowing it to work itself out.
right. And you can find, I think in Social Weapons page, I don't know, 167, 168 has the technique. But
Okay.
under the chapter on handling negative emotions talks about how to do the clearings, how to free yourself of the negative emotions.
Fabulous.
And then it also explains reframing and 6 ways for handling ridicule, because the social weapon ridicule does something that the other weapons don't do, which is it instantly gives you 2 weapons at the same time. And I'm sorry, I had a friend who might have to contact me, so I had my phone
Okay.
here. Yeah, so I'll stop there. I'll let you. Did
Well,
I? The,
I
the,
kind of, I no, you're saying exactly it, and hopefully people will go out and buy your book. I mean, I really want that. People need these skills and these tools in order to be able to peacefully defend against themselves, so that we don't have as much conflict in our society. Is we're having a lot of conflict right now, a lot of darkness going on. So I wanted to just kind of take that whole power versus force, which you're saying is working through your own emotions so that they don't stay with you, so that they don't stay stuck, and you're not like allowing them to dictate your behavior, right?
Right.
So how does that work of David Hawkins in allowing yourself to release and surrender your emotions? How does that equate, or what suggestions would you give to people? It's kind of a two-part question for their own peaceful self-defense when other people are, subjecting them to things like ridicule. And maybe we could talk a little bit more about creative broken record.
Um, there's a lot to unpack in that question.
Yes, there is.
Um, my let's start with my definition of defense.
Okay.
My definition of defense is taken from Karl von Clausewitz, who at 12 years of age was a lance corporal fighting a war against Napoleon. So he was 12 years of age, he's on the battlefield, and he rose from lance corporal, and he retired, I believe, as a major general. And in his lifetime, he wrote this book on war, and it's still studied in all the military colleges. And he says the only thing that turns any action into a defensive one is to put yourself in the best possible position to parry an attack. So the peaceful self-defense that I wish whoever this is, they would stop. Um, um,
So peaceful.
so yeah, so the Clausewitz says it's putting the next time we do this, Laura, I will not have my phone next to me. It's dry. I'm learning as this is for the audience, this is my second time ever. Yeah, so Clausewitz says the only thing that makes an action defensive is to put yourself in the best possible position to parry an attack, to get out of the way of an attack. And the peaceful self-defense system is all about how do you get out of the way of these social weapons and stay on your issue and get things dealt with. I'm doing kind of what I do in class, where when I get hit with a general question, I start talking all over.
You're answering it beautifully. You
Okay.
are answering the question. You
Okay.
really are. So, and I think it leads directly into just maybe give people some take home skills with creative broken records so that they know what to do or how to start the next time
Right.
this happens to them, maybe.
Yeah, it's well, the peaceful self-defense system is, first you just have to recognize you're irritated. Then you have to
Yes.
realize what your issue is. And one of the things where people often fail in defending whatever's going on is they're vague about their issue. The more
Right.
specific you can be, the more successful you can be. Then you have to learn to stay on your issue.
Yes.
And this is where the social weapons come in. Those 20 social weapons will have you talking about everything on the face of the earth except what you want to talk about.
Right.
And then you have to remain kind and courteous. Your warrior stance is staying connected to your power. And it's a dynamic model. This is all going on at the same time.
Yes.
And with a little bit of practice, people just get blown away because um, once you can stick to an issue, you can accomplish a lot.
Yes. And repetition sometimes.
Oh, yes, you're going and that's, and the thing is, using creative broken record, people don't know you're being repetitive. That's one of the secrets of the system. The fellow who helped me a lot in writing the book I wouldn't have finished it without him. He kind of sat on me and made me work. I want to go run around, you know. And but he said, well, this technique, he goes, well, all you do is repeat yourself. He goes, anyone's going to see that. And I said, Doug, I've been using it with you for over 5 years. You've never called me on it once. And he went, oh. And I said, if you ever see me doing it, tell me. And I never got not one time.
Right.
So the creative part is the creative part is like empathy. I'm feeding back to you. I understand you're having a really bad day. And I know, you know, you're really upset. And I get you kind of going, oh, yeah. And then I go move to my issue. But
Right.
I don't do it until you know you're being heard.
Yes. And I think that's one of the huge parts right there is people feeling heard.
Yeah,
So I feel like, you know, in what we've said right here, we've given people a lot to think about and a lot to work with. So I think I'm getting towards where I want to wrap up and close down this recording. So there's one thing that I would like to add before we close, because it's so important in your book and in the class that I will be attending next Saturday with my
right.
husband. I know you'll talk more about this, but it's the importance of using the word and instead of but, because you can say, yes, I understand you're having a bad day and you feel strongly about this, but you should listen to me because blah 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 blah. And when you use that word but, it throws out them listening to you.
Yeah, you know, um, whenever people, okay, I, I, I'm gonna back way up how I came up with the idea. I took a class probably 50 years ago. I have a friend who keeps asking me for an address, and if I don't give it to her, she's never going to quit. Um, I'm really sorry about this.
I'll just pause the recording real quick.
Yeah, so I'll try and make this a very short story, but I took a class from a psychologist who was teaching psychiatric residents how to use behavioral therapy techniques. And at the time, behavior therapy was new, it was just coming in vogue. And these guys were pretty much Freudian in their view of human behavior. And the Freudian looks at, you know, I change the way I feel, my behavior is going to change. The behaviorist said, you change your behavior, the way you feel is going to change.
Right.
So, two different models. And as he was teaching, everyone was raising their hand and arguing with him because they didn't buy into any of this. And I found it just continued very smoothly. And I said, you know, Dr. Armstrong, what is it you do? And he said, I said, I see people try and start a fight and it never starts. And he said, oh, I just use the magic word. I just tell the doctor what it was they were saying. And I say, and I continue with my lecture. He said, if I say but or however, they continue to argue with me. But
There
when
you
you
go.
say and, they think you're going to continue to agree. So that's where I came up with the idea.
Right. And it works.
And it really works.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
does. It
The,
does.
the thing about the book is everything in it is real and everything works.
Yes, it absolutely does.
And I mean, it's just what's going on out there. Yeah.
So I guess my final question then, unless there's anything that you would just like to put out there to share with my reader base, whoever happens to see this, is how can people get a hold of you if they want more information or they want to say order your book or take one of your classes?
Um, my Amazon account got hacked. So,
Uh-oh.
so if you want to buy the book off Amazon, you have to go see all sellers. Or
See
and
also.
which is
Okay.
a drag. But anyone who wants to buy a book can email me at cstory1111@gmail.com.
And that Storey, Storey.
EY, thank you.
All
Yes.
right. All right. Well, thank you so much, Chris. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording now. I just want to thank you again for joining joining me today. And readers, I look forward to your comments. Thank you so much.
Well, and